My name is Jacob Eisenbach. I was born 93 years ago. In fact, just a few days I had my 93rd birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I was born in the city of Łódź in Poland. And that is the second largest city in Poland after Warsaw. It had, before the war, about 700,000 inhabitants. And half of those inhabitants were Jews. An entire community. You know, it was just like living in Israel. All our friends were Jews. And my family consisted of 4 children and my parents. I had an older sister. Her name was Fela. She was 2.5 years older than I was. And I had 2 younger brothers. Sam was 2 years younger than I, and Henry, who was about 5 or 6 years younger than I was. Well, my mother died 1 year before the war, so she did not go through the Holocaust. And it was my younger brother Sam and I who survived the Holocaust. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful childhood. It was a very loving family. We always had company in our house, you know, family and friends. You know, our entire family lived within walking distance, 15, 20 minutes. So we were always visiting them, they were always visiting us, and our house was always open to friends and family. I had some Polish friends in my high school.
Did that change the relationship when the Holocaust started?
Oh yes. Oh yes, it did. But after the war, I lived in Germany and I met some really wonderful German people. And we made some good friends. I was about 16 years old when the war broke out, your age. Well, the nightmare began on September 1st, 1939. That's when the war broke out. And I heard Hitler on the radio. And he said there is going to be a war and bombs will be flying. What a threat. Put chills on our spines. But you know, Poland was completely unprepared because the war came unexpectedly. The Germans were armed to their teeth. They had tanks, armaments, they had an air force. Hitler started arming Germany practically from the day he came to power in 1933. And he was arming Germany until the war started. Before the war started, Hitler signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin. Well, we were scared of the Nazis. So many of those 350,000 Jews that lived in Łódź, in my hometown, escaped to the Russian part of Poland, because whatever the Russians did, they did not kill Jews. And my older sister Fela was one of those people who escaped to the Russian part of Poland. She escaped with a few of her girlfriends. Well, a lot of Jews in Poland were Orthodox. Mm-hmm. But but there was a certain percentage that was Reform. And my family was kind of in between. My mother always had a Shabbat dinner. She lit candles and prayer. And Passover was a big holiday. And of course we all observed Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah and some of the other holidays, but I didn't get hardly any Jewish education really. But every Friday night the whole family went to the temple. And I learned a lot from the rabbi's sermons. I realized what a great culture the Jewish people have. It's a fantastic culture. The Torah is a way of life. Now, a rabbi at the Chabad temple, Rabbi David Eliezri, an absolutely brilliant man. And he said that a person should first learn how to live and then learn how to make a living. And what he meant by that, learn how to live, means studying the Torah, because the Torah teaches you how to live. In fact, I was just in Israel. I just came back 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
3 weeks ago. That was my 11th trip to Israel. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Let's go back to Lodge. That's when the nightmare began, on September 1, 1939. Shortly after they occupied Lodge, my hometown, they started building a ghetto. The ghetto was surrounded by barbed wire all around. They took the oldest part of the city and made a ghetto out of it. Every 200 feet along that outside fence was a watchtower with Nazi guards with machine guns and searchlights. It was impossible to escape. Once the ghetto was locked up, you could not get out. Nobody could get out or in. Any Jew found outside the ghetto after May 1st, 1940 will be shot to death on the spot. About half of the Jews from Lodz escaped to the Russian part of Poland and wherever else they managed to escape. So by the time they locked up the ghetto on May 1st, there were 180,000 Jews in the ghetto. But once the ghetto was hermetically locked up, we were completely cut off from the rest of the world. There was no newspaper, there was no mail, there was no radio, absolutely nothing. We didn't know what was going on outside. The first thing the Nazi did once they locked up that ghetto is control our food supplies. They send us that much food per person. Each person got a food card, and each person got the same amount. And that caused so many people to just die of starvation.
In the ghetto first?
In the ghetto, they were falling, dropping dead in the streets of the ghetto from starvation. And the first people to die were big men, because they needed more food. Everybody got the same portion, a small portion. The big men just couldn't survive on that. What happened to them when your body is starved, your legs start swelling up, and the swelling moves up to your body, and when it reaches the heart, you just drop dead. I started swelling, my legs started swelling up, and somehow I got over it. We had a typhus epidemic in the ghetto. My youngest brother, Henry, was 11 at the time. He developed a high fever. And we had our own doctors in the ghetto. And there were 2 hospitals before the war in that part of the city, and they were incorporated into that ghetto. So I call the doctor, he takes a look at him and he says, it looks like he has typhus, take him to the hospital. So I took him to the hospital. The next day, I was on my way to my job. I had a little job there. And I was passing one of the 2 hospitals. But it wasn't the one my brother was in. And what do I see? A Nazi truck. It was like a truck like was used to transport cattle with spaces between the boards, you know. They were loading patients from that hospital. The streets were deserted. And they putting live patients on top of each other, 20 layers of live people on top of each other. Can you imagine? I started running to that other hospital where I took my brother in the day before. On the way, I came across one of these trucks. It was moving away already from that other hospital. And the streets were deserted. And I just stopped to look at that truck to see if I can see my brother in those spaces between the boards. Go to the room where my brother was. I took him there the day before. I know exactly where he was. And he wasn't there. So I asked the nurses, where's my brother? He was taken out 15 minutes ago. He was in that truck, and I couldn't see him. So that was the first victim in my immediate family. After that, they started shipping people from the ghetto, and they were telling them that they're going to other camps for work. But that was a big lie. We found out, at first we didn't know where they're taking them. But then we found out from the Polish train conductors, they took them by trainloads, a few thousand at a time. And they put them in cattle trains, you know, 150 people per car, standing room only. And the train conductors were telling us that they're taking these people by the thousands to Auschwitz, and no one ever comes out again. And they could smell burning flesh in the air. So we know what's going on. One day my father gets an order to report for deportation, together with 600 other men, and I have never seen him again. I met a man after the war who was in that group of 600, and he told me what the Nazis did to those people. My father was a businessman. He never worked physically, you know. They had him carry heavy rocks from one place to another, useless work on a starvation diet, and they all died out. But this one man somehow survived, and he told me the story. After the war, I met another person, a lady, who came from the city of Lvov, where my sister was. And she told me what happened in Lvov. See, the war started in 1939, and 2 years after Hitler signed the non-aggression pact with Stalin, he broke that pact and attacked the Soviet Union. So he occupied the eastern part of Poland, where my sister was. And that lady I met after the war told me what the Nazis did. There were 110,000 Jews in that ghetto in the city of Lvov, and the Nazis came in with machine guns, and they killed all 110,000 people in 3 days. One day I received an order to report for deportation, and I already knew what that deportation meant. That was a death sentence. I didn't report. I went into hiding. My brother and I. He didn't get an order for deportation, only me. He didn't have to go. But he was hiding together with me. We lived in a one-room place upstairs with squeaking wooden steps going up. And the police was there several times looking for me. And there was a padlock on that room. And the neighbors were telling me that the police was there a number of times. And every time they were there and they saw the padlocks, they just walked away. In the middle of the night, we hear steps, or those squeaking steps, with two loud voices, police, looking for me. And one of the policemen says to the other one, well, you see there's a padlock on the door, so there's nobody in there, let's go. And the other policeman was a wise guy, and he says, no, let's not go. Let's get a crowbar and knock off that padlock and see what's inside. So as we go downstairs, found the crowbar somewhere, knocked off the padlock, opened the door, and the good guy had a flashlight. He looks around, and there was nothing in the room, just a pile there, the two of us, my brother and I, in the corner. And the guy with the flashlight says, well, you see, there's nothing in that room. There's nobody here. Let's go. And the other guy says, no, let's not go. Let's look at that pile. And he finds us. My brother could have said, Jack, I know where you are going. You are going to the gas chamber. I'm not going with you. But this is not what he said. What he did say is, Jack, everybody from our family is now gone. There are just the two of us left. I'm not staying here by myself. I'm going with you. Whatever happens to you will happen to me. It is when Hitler broke that non-aggression pact with Stalin in 1941 against the advice of his top generals and politicians. They told him, don't do it. Napoleon tried it and he failed. You will not be able to supply the front lines in those Russian winters. 30, 40 below zero and 3 feet of snow. You just won't be able to supply the front lines. But Hitler wouldn't listen. The Nazis lost 4 million men at the Battle of Stalingrad because they couldn't supply the front lines. And that was the turning point in the war. They started losing the war and withdrawing from the Soviet Union and burning everything in sight. The train conductors, what the Nazis did, since they lost so many men at Stalingrad, they took their own people out of the war production and put them on the front lines. And that train that my brother and I was in, we were on the doorsteps of the gas chambers. But in the last minute, the train conductors got an order to change directions. Instead of going to Auschwitz, they went to the city of Skarżysko in Poland, maybe 70 miles from my hometown. Skarżysko had a munition factory, which was operated by the Polish government before the war, and the Nazis took it over. And the Nazis decided, instead of killing all of these young Jews, those who are still able to work, let's put them into our war production to replace those people who had to put out to the front. And that's where we ended up. One day on January 15 to 16, 1945, the war was still going on till May. But in January, on that night, the guards, the Nazi guards around that camp, disappeared from those watchtowers. They got orders to run for their lives because the Russians are after them. And we could hear artillery shots. So our Jewish leader of the camp told us, don't go out in the middle of the night. It's dangerous, there are bullets and shrapnels flying all over the place. Wait till the morning. So we listened to him. We waited till the morning. And the next morning, my brother and I walk out of the camp free. The bad policeman who insisted on looking and not leaving, he was a blessing in disguise. It was a miracle that he found us. Because 4 months later, in August of '44, the Nazis liquidated the ghetto and shipped all those remaining Jews in there to Auschwitz, to the gas chambers. And Sam joins the Polish army. Within 2 years, he was 22 years old. He had the rank of colonel, one rank under a general. Unheard of. That boy was a genius. And one day the army decides to send Sam to the city of Białystok in Poland, maybe 100 miles northeast of Warsaw. And the city of Białystok has been known to be very anti-Semitic. So Sam changes his name from Sam Eisenbach to Stanisław Adamowski, as Polish as you can get it. So they wouldn't know that he's a Jew, because there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Poland. So a lot of good Polish people too. Sam goes to Białystok. He's in command of 10,000 soldiers. One day he comes home from his office, and some anti-Semite got into his home before he got home